Now it says record.
Oh, damn.
Okay, so this is part 2 of what I hope will be an ongoing, dissemination of the work that we're both uncovering in different ways. We haven't seen each other for a year, and yet there's a synchronicity to the way we're coming from different angles at the same issues, and it's absolutely tying in. It's absolutely validating and expanding, which is really exciting. And I'm going to address briefly the thing of, it's not a begging bowl thing, but the thing of it's scandalous that somebody whose work is cutting edge and so in depth that the website's down and, the equipment's in danger of swallowing up evidence of research for years. So if you can donate, small or large, any amount, if this is something that you agree makes a huge difference and needs to get out there, needs to be documented, until we get this in book form, I would really passionately implore people to donate, either through my GoFundMe, through which I'll channel some funds to Kathy, or just go to her blog. Tell me the blog name again. Cathki, C-A-T-H-K...
Sorry, C-A-T-H-K-I.
Yeah, C-A-T-H-K-I, and what's the rest of it?
Cathki.wordpress.com.
Yeah, that's the only way you can at the moment access this, but I would like to get Kathy's website back up and secured, and get perhaps, more reliable equipment, a new laptop or something. So if you feel like I do as passionately that this work is invaluable, needs to continue and needs to be disseminated, your donations, small or large, would be hugely appreciated. And I'll throw it over to you, Kathy, to continue. And we both had focused, or we both had flagged the Rockefeller money as well as the Rothschild investment. And I'd like you to just address a little bit, who do you think was funding this over the past 70 years? Just, where were the funds coming from?
Well, Rockefeller is mentioned. Many of the background of the scientists, in fact, virtually all of them include some Rockefeller sponsorship, really. So they're implicated for sure. And of course, then there's the gestational Macy conferences, which have been known in the past. Macy's been known to generate funds for projects via the CIA. I've done it through philanthropy and charitable funding. That was an example of it. So,
and multi-millions have been put into this nefarious work and supposed clinical trials and attempts to conquer the human mind. Multi-millions.
Yeah, there's a variety of sources. When you look into the backgrounds of these sort of upper echelons of control, which might be a scientist, a medical doctor, and part of a governmental organisation, they can pull in, you find in the backgrounds they're owning tobacco companies and oil wells, and the H.S. Rothschild was owned of tobacco. Heisneck, from another psychologist who was part of MK Ultra, funded by tobacco companies for a lot of research. So you see what they did was, right, you can imagine they're charting all the implications of a fetus and its interaction with the mother and its survival. So they find out, first of all, psychologically, that baby, if you deprive it, because at this time they instructed midwives, literally from this embryology research, they were instructing midwives, number one, to cut the cord too soon, which is unthinkable, considering the depth of research they did and the implications of the lack of oxygen at that time. And they also told midwives to put babies on bottles of 4-hourly sucking. And then at the same time, they've got investments in tobacco companies. It's almost like that, tobacco companies, because they're going to bring in cigarettes, and they've got these babies who are desperately oral because they've been so told by the midwives not to give them bread, to put them outside if they're crying because they've got to wait 4 hours before they give them this bottle. This is linked so closely. The midwives are documented, being instructed by these people around the Nuffield Institute, who brought in the National Health Service at that time, under opposition about the way they were doing many things from other other parts of the medical community, but they had the king behind them. They had the big funding behind them. I mean, this goes to a high level, and we just happen to be able to track, you know, the linking of these
Sarah
people.
Goodley has done a lot of research into, I think she may be a midwife, or
Her sister is a midwife.
she's done incredible research into orchestrated trauma around the birth experience and so on, and I know that was going on in Big Bird.
Multi-pronged attack on the human. So the chemtrails will dumb us down. They're also a potential way of us ingesting anything they would like to put in it of that nature. The chemtrails, and we know that they're dumbing us down. We're being dumbed down through education, which is the psychological aspect of it, socially through the Tavistock manipulation. But then we've got the medical aspect here and the food aspect.
The medical aspect is huge. The medical
aspect is
and it's under researched. The medical
the type
side
of things they were researching make no sense in terms of the health of humanity or the evolution in the true sense of humanity, and is moved towards getting better and better and so on. That's been cut off.
This is why we're not. This isn't just history. This hasn't stopped. It's galloping.
This is the roots of what's going on now. This is the roots. And
this is where it started. In our recent history, this is where it started. But the Illuminati, or whatever, the elite, whatever you want to call it, they're almost thinking we're nearly home and dry. We've nearly done it. Do you know what I mean? I would assert that the New World Order has already begun.
Yes.
You know. But anyway, I'll throw it back to you. And you pick up wherever. We're not going to cover all this in one go. But just
humanity got under a great boost from the war. But if you take the Second World War, the movement of Jewish doctors from Germany to England in this medical research that I'm looking at particularly is notable, really. And it was, funnily enough, a very close friend of Joseph Barkhoff's that brought in many of these scientists, vouched for them, asked for them, stood up for them, and not all of them were Jewish. There was one called Martha Vogt. Vogt was head of a department at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute before she came over, and she was there when Einstein was there. I think she worked under Einstein, and Dale brought her over, and she ended up in the animal research laboratories. You see, Barkhoff was also studying gases and insecticides. So Lady Moran, for example, was researching mustard gas, but there's a big blur around the big push of insecticides and the research of gases, because they were the same chemical compounds. And they were also researching the serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter between the neurons, which is how the brain thinks, but they were also doing the electronic measuring at the same time. So looking at, and the hormonal, which is the serotonin, and it went into the psychiatry. So you've got Joel Ellis looking at the psychiatric medication, and you know, he was working at Porton Down too, and he was working for MK Ultra. And he was working on muscarines, which are the organophosphate drugs. Now, this is what all the Nazi experimentation was around, some of this, because not only was it agriculture and insecticide, it was also gas, and some of these drugs interfered with mind control. You've got
to. I want to just give a shout out here to Sue H. Oakley. She's got a YouTube channel called Sue Free Woman, and she's got documents handwritten by her father about mustard gas and gases and his
well, that links right in with the paperclip sciences.
Yeah.
And all the blur between, was it insecticide, was it was it a chemical weapon? You see, there's not much difference.
So just before we conclude on the academic and the names and the committees and the funding, can you just give me a little bit of a take it back down personal, and then we'll go back to the evidence-based stuff. Can you just give me a little outline of what started you on this quest? And, you know, what, just give, for those that haven't looked at your work or mine or understood, because I just want to make it clear that MK Ultra research was A, involuntary, B, unethical, and C, totally traumatising and devastating for the subjects, whether they were military children, whether they were twins, whether they were psychiatric inmates, whether they were prisoners, you know, wherever they culled their involuntary subjects from, the fallout is phenomenal. It's devastating. So can you just give a little 2-minute thing on the personal level of what got you so impassioned about this?
Okay, so the course that my life had taken started off as a child that felt something was dreadfully wrong, who was running away from home at the age of 6, and dreaming of her dad being part of an organisation of men that wore robes. I'd get the kids together and try and get resistant groups together because things were so weird as a child, and I was behaviourally brought up with behavioural control, and we got this amazing education with Latin and logic and languages, and until the age of 11 then we've shipped back off to Rochdale, our hometown. And then I meet up at 15, I run away and go and work at the Athenaeum Club, and all these scientists are members of the Athenaeum Club out of these, you know, as well, which is so weird. And then I meet Niall, who's part of, really looks like is part of an MK Ultra linked program with his godfather. But as I said, I got quite happy, became an Earth mother and had a wonderful family, and became totally independent and not under control. So I was an independent thinker in that for many years, which has kind of led to me being an independent researcher, totally independent.
We're the ones
I know. There can't be that many sort of on the what we've gone through was so unique, and you know, whatever we were being prepared for, it's given us the skills to turn it around and start researching it ourselves. I mean, maybe because I do believe that they were engineering through this eugenics, we're trying to engineer, you know, great engineers or great mathematicians or someone who'd be in place as a politician or a journalist and so on. And I think there's some aspects of that in our background. I think we were made for success, and then we were thrown into other situations, and because that's a documented study, that people got to the age of 11, and if what kind of things happened that would throw their lives, and then they wouldn't make it, you know, there was...
Part of mind control is to keep you always off centre, off balance, so it's a case of, it's not enough to just traumatise and shatter the psyche and the minds and separate and do all that in childhood. In order to keep us functioning as the roboticised, artificially orchestrated, gifted, controllable humans, is to keep reinforcing the trauma and to even have us internalise that we keep reinforcing the trauma.
Well, on a massive scale.
And I
give
read
you alters through the media to go into the films and
the multiplication of it to make it self-generating.
Celebrities provide the alters that they want you to, and then they shatter you. And
I read somewhere that because all through our formative years, like up to 7 ideally, but 12 you can stretch it to, if we only had serotonin from trauma, that because we've been programmed that way, unless we heal in adulthood, we keep generating more trauma into our lives to get the normal release of serotonin and the other chemicals
because that's what we use
and it's just, and until we realise no, that's not normal and that's not necessary, we can get it through healthy food.
What you have to do is
we can get it
anticipation of when it's going to trigger, so you just learn to
so that we're no longer a programmed self-regenerating subject, because it's almost, they had a real eye to making it multiply.
It's almost like cybernetic. It's been cybernetically worked out and engineered too. And of course the cyberneticists were there in the initial Macy conferences. In fact, Barcroft's colleague William Gray Walter and student initially was attending the Macy conferences. He was a cyberneticist. And they're hobnobbing all together in these groups, you know, and these little get-togethers. Like there's another group, the Inklings, at Oxford, which was closely linked to one or two of the guys that were doing the Tower of the Winds, and Tolkien was part of that one.
I think
so
as well,
literature as well.
I think as well it links into why they embedded it with the original subjects in generationally abusive families where they could. and because then they could train the siblings to continue, the parents to be handlers and programmers. They had an eye for multiplying it for humanity. It was not enough for them to get 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 subjects. They were always looking to, how can we make it reproduce?
Yes.
How can we keep it embedded? How can we train up clusters of human beings to keep each other traumatised, triggered, rejected, dissociated, off-centre, so that this will multiply.
Yeah, which is almost a cybernetic rule and divide, which is the old Roman, Chinese, any ancient warrior military system of identify, divide and conquer. And they've just taken it into a scientific level. But people in these clubs said that they wanted science to be the new religion. And of course, Aldous Huxley writing Brave New World there, designing MK Ultra experiments. And he also ran cults, the Children of the Sun, and he was linked to the Golden Dawn and the Sword of Bladud in Swainswick.
Can you talk to me a bit more about that? Because I don't understand that.
Well, Swainswick is interesting in other ways too. It's Swainswick is actually owned by Oriel College, Oxford, and Oriel College has this Sword of Bladud hanging in it now, and it used to be kept at Swainswick.
What is the Sword of Bladud?
It's a sword which I'm trying to find out more about, but I'm finding it referred to in Freemasonic literature and in the Golden Dawn group, which is linked to Aleister Crowley.
Right.
And it also links to Aldous Huxley, who was actually just involved in MK Ultra and some of the more occult experiments in MK Ultra. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Huxley family because you've also got UNESCO rolling out programs of control, of which Julian Huxley was the founder and chairman. And we've also seen Julian Huxley there with Solly Zuckerman, who helped influence the design of the population study, the NCDS, and he was RAF based. And he did the big, huge chimpanzee study. It's like a big, thick man. They've looked at every aspect of the brains and I haven't even had a chance to have a proper look. Anyway, but the sword is kept at Swainswick, and Rhodes scholarships are implemented at Oriel College. Fellows of Oriel College, the Rhodes Scholars go there.
And Cecil Rhodes and Rhodesia, and that's all another whole...
That's another thing that links in here, because this is New World Order stuff we're talking. Rhodes, the house that I was built on, the land my house was built on when I was in Bath, was on the grounds of a mansion called the Elms, and the couple that lived there, her Alice Wallace, her father made his fortune at the same diamond mines as Rhodes and was on boards together. So, and it was also an elite place because the royalty was visiting them. Now, she died in 1938 and he built a park. He bequeathed her 11 acres, so my house is definitely included. It's just right next to the park. And he also built an underground bunker there that was very close to the Burlington bunker at Caution. I wouldn't be surprised if they were linked up. There's a train line through there and everything. So they'd be linked up because it went in through Box Tunnel.
I was just going to say, I knew you were going to say Box Tunnel.
Yeah,
I knew you were going to say that.
Park, and also the park-keepers' cottages were designed by George Jellicoe, who was big Admiralty, all sorts, big Warburg director. Anyway, that's going off topic a bit. Swainswick. Harold Wilson was a member of that Tots and Quats. What I identified, he was a later member of it. He was also, when I was in the Athenaeum Club, as a runaway 15-year-old waitress. I was serving him. He was in the dining room.
What's Tots and Quats?
I said identified an organisation that's bringing a lot of these people together in one group. And Solly Zuckerman, who designed the NCDS, NCDS survey, was part of it. And Julian Huxley was part of it.
Tots and Quats, that's a funny name.
Who knows? And Lancelot Hodgman. There's a few more people I've not come... Frederick Lindemann was German, I think Jewish, and he was financed by British Oxygen, which, as I say, was funding the Bath Institute Now, he was in Tops and Quarts, and he was also working with Henry Dale, and Dale was working with Andrew Huxley at the Plymouth Marine Centre, working on the nerve endings of giant squids so they could see how nerves worked.
And what was Andrew Huxley to Julian and Aldous?
A sibling. And we've also got a Hugh Huxley that was on a different department scientifically.
Another sibling?
Yeah, another
Wow.
sibling.
Wow.
And as I say, they're linked in with the Barclays, the family, like family-wise, who financed the Tower of the Winds. You see, this is irrefutable, really. And then Vogt, and as I was saying, the Ministry of Agriculture, Barcroft moved into it, and that's another front on which they can attack on humanity. They've done tests that when they colonised India, that if they took the bit of B12 out of the grain, they'd already done tests, and that showed that in mental hospitals, that showed that if they took it out completely, the patient would just get violent. But if they just took a bit, if they left a bit in, they'd just get very unmotivated and depressed. But if they left enough in for them to operate, to have the motivation to operate, they can control mood through, and that's just one example of a substance. So they take over the food supply. It's very dodgy to me, you know.
Absolutely.
In the light of what else? But guess where the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, when they joined it, they centralised the food supplies and the herds they were, you know, overseeing. They keep the records at the Oriel College, Swainswick, they said, and the National Archives, the actual... And we're talking herds here now. They were literally researching foot and mouth as an offshoot. This Vogt, Martha Vogt, was very much in this area of things, the food and the agriculture and the herds. And if you think about the Illuminati, they see themselves as the shepherds, or the herdsmen,
and we're the
of
sheeple.
humanity, and we literally
The
are.
sheeple.
And they're all zoologists as well as doing this other stuff, you know.
The useless eaters. We're going to have to
And
wind this up.
H.G. Wells was part of the Totten Quats, who wrote all this in kind of policy documentation as a what if, wouldn't that be great?
I think people will agree this is exciting work. It's 4 o'clock. Kathy's got to go and attend to her daughter and you know, continue her life, but I'm definitely going to do everything I can to keep this research getting out.